February 19th, 1945. The volcanic island of Iwo Jima rose from the Pacific like a scar on the sea, an 8-square-mile wasteland of black ash and sulfur fumes, halfway between the Mariana Islands and Tokyo. To the men of the United States Marine Corps approaching it aboard crowded landing ships, the island appeared lifeless, barren, insignificant. Yet beneath that black sand, a Japanese army of 21,000 waited in silence, prepared to die to the last man. The coming weeks would turn this unremarkable rock into a graveyard, a symbol, and finally, an idea. For the Americans, Iwo Jima represented necessity. The B-29 Superfortress bombers that daily rose from Saipan and Tinian had one deadly weakness: distance. The flight to Japan and back pushed aircraft and crews to their limits. Iwo Jima offered a solution: an emergency landing field for damaged bombers and a forward base for fighter escorts. For the Japanese, it represented the doorstep of the homeland, the outer wall of an empire collapsing inward. It could not be surrendered. The result would be one of the most brutal battles in the history of human warfare, a conflict where the mathematics of industry met the metaphysics of sacrifice. Unlike other Pacific islands, Iwo Jima was not fortified with beaches bristling with guns and pillboxes. Its defense lay underground. General Tadamichi Kobayashi, a man of intelligence and sorrow, understood the futility of traditional defense. Having studied in America, he knew what American industry could unleash. He ordered the construction of an underground empire: 11 miles of tunnels, bunkers carved into volcanic rock, artillery positions invisible from air. Engineers dug chambers large enough to house hospitals, command posts, and barracks, all connected by labyrinthine tunnels resistant to bombardment. By February 1945, the island had become a subterranean citadel. Above ground, the terrain was a hellscape of ash and sulfur, devoid of vegetation. Below ground, a disciplined army waited in silence, cut off from the world, but determined to make the Americans pay. Kobayashi forbade suicide banzai charges. He ordered each man to kill 10 Americans. His plan was not to win, but to bleed the invaders so deeply that they might hesitate before invading Japan itself. When American reconnaissance photos reached the Pentagon, planners misread the island's quiet as weakness. The assumption was simple: after 72 days of continuous naval and air bombardment, nothing could have survived. The bombardment had dropped 6,800 tons of bombs and fired over 22,000 shells. Iwo Jima looked dead. It was not. At 9 a.m. February 19, 1945, the first wave of Marines landed. Within minutes, the beach turned into chaos. The volcanic sand swallowed boots and shovels alike. Tanks bogged down. The ash absorbed shock, making digging foxholes nearly impossible. The moment the third wave landed, Kobayashi gave the order. The island erupted. Artillery and machine guns hidden within Mount Suribachi and the northern ridges opened fire. The beaches became death traps. Marines found themselves exposed, pinned, unable to dig cover. The air filled with the hiss of bullets and the scream of mortars. By nightfall, over 2,400 Americans lay dead or wounded. The first day's objectives, capturing Suribachi and cutting the island in half, remained untouched. Every inch of Iwo Jima had to be taken by direct assault. Flamethrowers, grenades, satchel charges, and bulldozers became weapons of choice. The terrain offered no mercy. Wounded men rolled into sand that stuck to their burns. Corpses turned black in the sun, indistinguishable from the volcanic earth. For Kobayashi, this was success. Every day the Americans stayed on Iwo Jima, he knew Japan gained time. For the Marines, time measured only in blood. By the fifth day, February 23rd, Mount Suribachi, 550 feet of volcanic stone, was surrounded. Inside, Japanese troops fought from tunnels that spiraled upward. Flamethrower teams advanced yard by yard. When the summit was finally reached, a small flag was raised. The men below cheered, ships in the bay blew horns. Yet somewhere on the beach, Associated Press photographer Joe Rosenthal saw officers order a larger flag raised so the troops below could see it more clearly. Rosenthal took the photograph in a split second, unaware that he had captured immortality. The image, 6 Marines struggling to raise the stars and stripes on Mount Suribachi, would become the most reproduced photograph in human history. But the men beneath it did not see a symbol. They saw only exhaustion, comradeship, and relief. That one small part of hell was over. For the Americans, the photograph was victory incarnate. For the men still fighting, the war was far from over. 2/3 of the island remained unconquered. After Suribachi fell, the real battle began. The northern plateau, called the Motoyama Plain, became a maze of hidden tunnels, camouflaged bunkers, and interlocking fields of fire. Each ridge, each cave required annihilation at point-blank range. The flamethrower became the emblem of Iwo Jima. Marines advanced with M2 flamethrowers, their tanks filled with thickened gasoline, turning caves into furnaces. The Japanese responded with suicide grenades and artillery so well concealed that gunners survived for weeks after being surrounded. The 4th and 5th Marine Divisions fought through terrain so dense with corpses that medical units had to bulldoze burial trenches every evening. Engineers blasted caves with TNT, snipers fired from invisible holes. Every gain was measured in yards. Kotobayashi's strategy worked. By March 1st, American casualties exceeded 17,000. But the arithmetic of war favored the Americans. Every Marine replaced by another shipload, every burned-out tank replaced by another from the fleet. The island itself was finite. The tunnel system, though immense, was not endless. Slowly, relentlessly, the Marines sealed the island shut. Kotobayashi's last radio messages reflected resignation without despair. He wrote, "The enemy has already penetrated the heart of our defenses. Our men fight to the end. We pray for the Empire's eternal prosperity." By the time organized resistance ended on March 26, 1945, Iwo Jima had consumed 26,000 American casualties, nearly 7,000 dead, the costliest battle in Marine Corps history. Of the 21,000 Japanese defenders, only 216 were captured alive. The rest had vanished into the island, buried beneath the ash they had sworn to defend. The arithmetic stunned even hardened commanders. Every square mile of the island had cost nearly 900 American casualties. The airfields, Motoyama 1, 2, and 3, lay shattered but usable. Engineers began repairs before the last Japanese were killed. The first B-29 to make an emergency landing on Iwo Jima came on March 4th, while fighting still raged. It carried 11 men. All survived. By war's end, 2,400 damaged bombers would make similar landings, saving an estimated 25,000 airmen. Each life saved became a silent justification for the island's cost. But among the Marines who survived, justification was thin comfort. They had seen the island devour men whole. Rosenthal's photograph became propaganda gold. Within weeks, it was reproduced in newspapers worldwide. The 6 men in the image became national heroes. 3 died before the war's end. The survivors, René Gagnon, Ira Hayes, and John Bradley, were sent home to sell war bonds. They stood on stages beneath spotlights, raising flags before cheering crowds, haunted by the knowledge that their real brothers,
lay buried beneath Iwo Jima's ash. The photograph froze a moment of victory that concealed the agony of its making. Americans saw triumph. The men who fought saw waste, courage, and comradeship beyond comprehension. The flag became a monument not to conquest, but to endurance. For Japan, Iwo Jima became a national wound. Kotobayashi's last message, intercepted after his death, declared, "The Battle of Iwo Jima is over. We fought until the end for our emperor and country. May Japan endure." His strategy of attrition worked in a tragic sense. Iwo Jima taught America what an invasion of Japan might cost. The island became the arithmetic model for the final apocalypse.
Operation Downfall, the planned invasion of the Japanese home islands. Military analysts calculated that, based on Iwo Jima and Okinawa casualty rates, invading Japan could cost over 1 million American lives and untold Japanese civilians. When President Truman later weighed the decision to use atomic weapons, Iwo Jima's black sands lay silently beneath the discussion, a warning written in ash and blood. For the Marines, the island became legend. Out of 82 Medals of Honor awarded to Marines during World War II, 27 came from Iwo Jima. The ratio of heroism to survival defied imagination. Chaplains wrote of men dragging wounded comrades under fire, medics dying with morphine syrettes in hand, flamethrower operators engulfed by their own flames. Yet the deeper revelation came not from heroism, but from endurance. The island proved that industrial democracy could sustain courage equal to fanaticism. The Japanese fought for emperor and death. The Americans fought for each other and the chance to go home. Both found transcendence in suffering. After the war, Iwo Jima became a silent shrine. American graves were exhumed and returned home. Japanese remains continued to be recovered for decades. The island itself was returned to Japan in 1968, its airfield now used by both nations. But the memory endured. For Japan, Iwo Jima symbolized noble defeat, the ultimate proof of devotion. For America, it became the embodiment of sacrifice required for freedom. The flag raising became bronze, immortalized in the Marine Corps War Memorial in Arlington, Virginia. Beneath it, the names of Pacific battles are carved: Guadalcanal, Tarawa, Saipan, Iwo Jima, Okinawa. But it is Iwo Jima that draws the gaze, the frozen instant when 6 men lifted cloth and metal into history. Historians later revisited the photograph, correcting names, uncovering misidentifications. Yet none of that diminished its meaning. The image remains what it was, an accidental monument to shared endurance, an icon of human cost. Beyond strategy and symbolism, Iwo Jima revealed the paradox of modern war, the intersection of mass production and individual suffering. American logistics delivered 450 ships, 110,000 troops, and 22,000 vehicles to an island 8 square miles wide. Each ton of supplies fought against 8 square miles of volcanic dust. It was abundance meeting resistance. Japan's defenders, fighting with discipline and fatalism, turned scarcity into virtue. Their underground empire represented the peak of human endurance under hopeless conditions. America's overwhelming supply represented the Industrial Revolution at war. When these forces met, the result was annihilation. Yet out of annihilation came revelation. The photograph of the flag became proof that democracy could produce courage equal to fanaticism without worshiping death. The men who raised it were ordinary: a plumber's apprentice, a store clerk, a farmer's son. They did not seek immortality, they found it by accident. That was democracy's secret strength. Heroism born of ordinariness. In post-war years, Iwo Jima continued to echo through memory. Veterans spoke little, haunted by the island's sensory memories: the smell of sulfur,
the weight of sand, the screams in tunnels. For Japanese survivors, the island became sacred ground. Annual pilgrimages honored the dead of both sides. American strategists studied Kurubayashi's defenses for decades. His tunnel network inspired Cold War doctrines of fortified command centers. His refusal of banzai charges marked a shift from spectacle to strategy, from death for glory to death for purpose. The Marines' experience on Iwo Jima reshaped military doctrine. The need for flamethrowers and demolition teams led to post-war development of mechanized assault engineering. The lesson of Iwo Jima wasn't just courage. It was the industrial precision of courage, applied methodically. In the end, both sides learned. Japan learned the futility of heroic death. America learned the price of necessary victory. When the war ended, Joe Rosenthal's negatives sat archived among thousands. Yet its image outlived all others. It appeared on postage stamps, war bonds, and monuments. Children studied it in classrooms, unaware that 3 of the men in the frame never returned. The photograph transcended context, becoming shorthand for victory, sacrifice, and national unity. But for those who knew the truth, the image contained tragedy. Ira Hayes, the Pima Indian who helped raise the flag, returned home to fame and isolation. Haunted by survivor's guilt, he died in 1955, face down in a ditch near his reservation, a bottle by his side. The nation remembered his pose, but not his pain. John Bradley, the Navy corpsman in the photograph, rarely spoke of it. When asked by his son decades later, he said only, "The real heroes are the ones who didn't come back." His son, James Bradley, would write Flags of Our Fathers, resurrecting the humanity beneath the myth. In that book, he captured the truth that bound both sides of Iwo Jima. The raising of the flag on Suribachi means that uncommon valor was a common virtue. Iwo Jima at its core was the inversion of the lesson learned in the prison camps of America. There, abundance transformed ideology. Here, scarcity tested democracy. Yet both proved the same truth. Freedom's strength lay not in cruelty or fear, but in endurance and faith in ordinary men. The Americans who stormed Iwo Jima were products of an industrial democracy that could make ice cream ships and Coca-Cola bottling plants, and still produce soldiers who would crawl up volcanic ridges under fire. The same civilization that gave enemies ice cream could also breed men who would die for each other in black ash. Today, Iwo Jima remains uninhabited, except for a small Japanese garrison. Its beaches are still black, its tunnels silent. Time has buried the scars, but not the meaning. The airstrip still functions, occasionally hosting joint American-Japanese memorials. On those days, veterans from both nations stand side by side, once enemies, now old men, united by memory. They understand something the world too often forgets, that the true cost of war cannot be measured in numbers or medals, but in what it teaches about humanity's capacity to endure, destroy, and forgive. As the sun sets over Mount Suribachi, shadows stretch across the island where tens of thousands died for principles, for orders, for friends, for nothing, and for everything. The black sand glows red in the twilight, as if remembering. In the end, Iwo Jima gave the world 2 enduring legacies: a strategic airfield that saved thousands of airmen, and a photograph that saved none, but changed everything. It taught that even in the heart of destruction, beauty could emerge, accidental, fragile, immortal. The 6 men on Suribachi lifted not just a flag, but the weight of civilization itself, proving that the strength of democracy lay not in invincibility, but in the willingness to bleed for ideals that could not be seen, only believed. The island that devoured men became the island that defined them.